Marianne. I am too. I'm better with faces.
Hey there, it's Jordan. I am in West Virginia, right outside of Charleston, which is the state capital. We came from Morgantown. Is it called Morgantown?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Morgantown earlier today, where we spoke with some fine folks. We are going next, I believe, to Huntington to cover another apartment complex with poor folk being evicted. So that should be an interesting story. But I'm here with Kathy, Sally, and Marianne. You are West Virginians and have had your own experiences here with President Manchin, as I like to call him. So I'd like to talk about that, inflation, all of that, because the media covers Manchin a lot, and he's called a centrist sometimes or a moderate, but I don't really see them talking to many folks on the ground about their experiences and what his inaction has led to. So before we get to Manchin, smash the like button, thumbs up, share this live stream, super chats appreciated. But before we get to that, I just wanted to ask how you guys are dealing. Obviously, gas prices, food prices, electricity, housing. I mean, pretty much everything. Stick of bubble gum is through the roof.
That's
I know
right.
Mr. Manchin claims to be so concerned about it, but anybody with your personal experience with inflation right now?
Well, I can tell you with the heat and the electricity bills and the fact that we have to pay extra for electricity because because of Manchin and the PSC, we are keeping old coal-fire electric plants going with AEP that we're going to end up taking the brunt of paying for.
Can you explain that? Because the New York Times kind of covered it, but Manchin, through his coal company and some nefarious things he did, electricity rates shot up for his constituents.
They kept a coal-fire plant going so that they could continue to use coal rather than switching over to a cleaner energy that they actually have the availability to do. But because the Public Service Commission buckled under Manchin's pressure, supposedly anyway, we now are going to face increased rate hike on all of our electric bills because we're forced to use coal instead of going ahead and using the wind energy that they have.
I find that interesting because Manchin's whole rationale for doing nothing is inflation and prices going up for his constituents.
Right.
But you're talking about...
Here we are paying higher prices because of Manchin. And Manchin is absolutely wrong about inflation. If, in fact, we would have passed Build Back Better, if he would have passed these bills, inflation would be lower. If we would go to green energy, inflation would be lower. So he's absolutely wrong about that. He's doing it for his own purposes, not for the benefit of West Virginians.
Mm-hmm. And electricity rates are pretty high?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I keep saying that, the state is tethered to, manufacturing that are, making us suffer in multiple types of ways. And because of our stagnancy, we have people leaving the state in droves. And that, again, is, adding to the increase of all utilities because our contracts are set for a particular amount and it's per capita. But if people leave, then they still have to make their money. So all they do is increase the rates on those of us who are left. So we're paying the cost in many ways, through the environment, through, different things that we're exposed to and all of this type of thing. But then we also have to, and our infrastructure is deteriorating, but then we also have to, pay in that way as well. So it's just an unfortunate reality that, we are situated in. And I think if our leaders would actually take the time to lead, instead of trying to, do this psychobabble about how they're following sort of what's happening on the ground without connecting with people, that would be better. I mean, I would like to see Manchin sort of step out and instead of, saying, well, my constituency or their constituency is saying that we should do this. If he went out and actually spoke to people and helped to educate them and said, well, you could do this or have this, which would you prefer? People can see the value in that. They can make easy assessments to say, like, this is going to be better for me, this is going to be better for my family, this is the direction we should go. But he won't do that. He won't speak to folks in plain language and in a just informal way. And it's hard to even get time to see him.
Well, actually, let me tell you, I've been on the ground. I was told, by a source that to get one-on-one with him, you got to donate a lot of money. Yeah. I mean, a scheduled one-on-one.
Right.
You could paddle up to his yacht,
yeah.
or try to jump on his Lamborghini. But a scheduled one-on-one, you're talking, you got to donate 20, 25 grand just to get in the room with him, which kind of shows you the problem. The other thing is, isn't reported this way, but how can the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee, the committee that regulates energy, how can he do that if he has a coal company?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a complete conflict of interest, and I think most rational people can see that there's conflict of interest right there. And I don't understand, they keep talking about, we're going to advance House ethics and Senate ethics, but I don't see any movement on that, and it just it's concerning, and I feel like he just needs to be removed, or that has to change in some way, because we're suffering with him sort of lining his pockets at our expense when it comes to that. A lot of the policies that are coming down the pike are really things that favor him and favor oil and gas and petrochemicals, and they're doing a disservice for the folks here. And the point I think I forgot to make earlier is that we have young people who we're relying on to be here and to help sort of be here to live and to have families and contribute to the survival of our state. But they're leaving in droves because they realize that the commitment is not there from our leadership to do the things that they need to do, and they're seeking their fortunes and they're seeking quality of lives elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And again, we're left here to pay the cost. Those of us who can't afford to leave, aren't in a position to do so, or who choose to stay because this is their home, and they're trying to make a way, or just fighting through, or trying to fight through and get things to change and course correct. So it's a funky situation, but I do believe that a lot of what's happening too is some of it is manufactured. I think in terms of even like the gas rates, I believe that there was some congressional testimony from oil and gas people, and they basically couldn't justify anything other than to say that they just want the profits and they can get it, and that's what they're going to put on us, and nobody puts the kibosh on that. And it's like, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and it's like, isn't it interesting? How did all of a sudden, how did rates go down by 60 cents, like in a week? Like, there's no explanation, there's no conversation about that. So things happen,
right?
And a lot of folks don't understand sort of what's at play.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, Marianne. I keep hearing from the media, that Manchin has to vote this way because Trump won West Virginia by 40 points, and it's a Republican state. I don't know. I'm not from here, but I know a little bit. It was a blue state for a century. It's got a proud populist tradition.
Yes.
Was strong once upon a time among unions. So I'd like to know what they're talking about, because I've spoken with more conservative folk. Yeah, they love their Bible and guns and all that, but economically, a lot of the things Manchin's voting against are popular, even on the right. Mm-hmm. So I don't get the message from the framing by the media that, well, he's got to justify this to the conservative West Virginians.
That's because they're not from here, and so he starts feeding them. It's just like, apparently we're all on opioids too. Because that's the reason we can't give out a child tax credit. But I think it was like 100,000 children were benefiting from that.
Right.
And although I don't have any children that I would get it, indirectly grandparents benefit because in West Virginia we help each other. We help each other's families. And so if my daughter is getting a child tax credit, who is not on drugs, by the way, then that also benefits me because that's less money because that's the way it is here, is that we help each other and we help our families as families are trying to, grow. And you see a lot of grandparents that are taking care of their grandchildren in this state. Yes, because of the opioid problem. And they were getting the child tax credit because if they're raising the child. So that fallacy is crazy.
Didn't Manchin say that this money they're going to spend it on drugs and things like that?
Yeah. Yes, and so even if you were to go and say, let's say what he said was true. So if this is a person that's managed to be able to hold a job, to be able to get this child tax credit, do you want to give them a little bit of money every month? Or do you want to give them thousands of dollars at the end of the year? Because either way, these same people are going to get this money. So you're more likely to have a parent of a child overdose if they get thousands of dollars at the end of the year. That's saying if what he said was true, which is not, But in that sense that he's more likely, if people are waiting to the end of the year, to have a parent to overdose on drugs, than if you're giving them a little bit of money, monthly.
Right.
But, they're not on drugs like that because most of those people lose their children. Are there some probably still in homes? Yeah, possibly so. But the majority of people getting the child tax credit and that was benefiting were working families that are taking care of their children and trying to do the best they can to put food on their table and have a roof over their heads.
Oh, Marianne, I'm going to piggyback and just say, well, maybe there were some people who had to use their money on drugs because his daughter raised the prices on so many of them.
On some other drugs.
Yeah, that you have, on other drugs. You know what I'm saying?
On
insulin and EpiPens and things of that nature.
Just if you don't know, somehow Joe Manchin's daughter, who, by the way, he paid for her to get her degree. She didn't actually finish college. That's another thing. He paid it off. But she was somehow the CEO of Mylan, a pharmaceutical company, price gouged EpiPens, similar to that pharma bro who went to jail. Of course, he's now out of jail after a couple years, and nothing happened to her. And he talks about entitlements.
Exactly.
He likes to talk about entitlement, but his daughter criminally jacked the price of life-saving medicine. And from what I've been told by many people, she didn't actually finish for her degree. He paid for it. Yeah. So it's just staggering hypocrisy and corruption.
Yeah. It is.
Well, I feel like everybody wants to say entitlement, and I feel like, we deserve some entitlement. We deserve representatives. We are entitled to representatives that truly do represent us. And if we don't hold them accountable, Manchin, our current leadership, Mike Pushkin in the Democratic Party, if the rank and file Democrats in West Virginia, I know our numbers are getting small, if we don't hold these people accountable when they're doing things like this. So this is how abuses of power continue, because we keep on sitting back just kind of meekly. Well, there's a few of us, maybe have a louder voice, but we're meekly behind the scenes talking about it, but we're still, and then we're letting them just keep accumulating. And this is how Manchin has gotten his power, and this is why we have to cut this stuff off, when we have new leadership. Mm-hmm. If we manage to get a new senator, we've got to keep our eye on our representatives, so that as they're doing votes that we don't agree with, they need to know that we don't agree with them, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. But a lot of times when you're within your own party, you remain silent, which I have never been accused of.
Well, the sad thing about it is that he's talking about, Trump and, and the numbers that he had. But the reality is that you ran as a Democrat. Now you're representing everybody, but the ideals of which you're standing on are Democratic ideals, and there's still people who are Democrats who voted for you. Exactly. So the interest is to sort of advance those initiatives as well. And his whole, the fallacy of being bipartisan, I'm like, you're always crossing over there, But why don't you get your homegirl, Shelly Moore, to come on this side?
Exactly.
Like, it's a one-sided relationship, and most people will break up with somebody when it's one-sided, but for some reason, it doesn't operate this way. And I'm just like, there are other people here besides Trump supporters, and the sad reality is that the Trump supporters need as much as the Build Back Better, as much as the reconciliation would stand to have the filibuster moved on with that, as everybody else. So the job for the candidate and for our presumptive lead, is to take the message to the people, make it consumable, make it so that people understand, and lead on the issue. Just you lead on the issue in an appropriate, righteous, true fashion. And I just don't see that. And that's the disappointing thing about Joe. He's a nice personality, people, are attracted to him in that way. But he's got to do better in terms of that. And it really, pisses me off. I know I'm smiling.
And it is the thing with media. I mean, Trump was right about it. You got to give him credit where credit's due. And you were saying
the local media is atrocious everywhere.
Right. You were saying that the media is saying, oh, he has to vote this way because West Virginia is so conservative. But West Virginians also believe in making enough money so that you can feed your family.
Right.
And
we don't really like to go and get assistance.
Yeah.
But when push comes to shove, you go and get assistance.
Right.
You shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs. I've worked for state government, and a lot of state workers work more than one job because they don't make enough on the one job, which is not full-time. Working for state government, they don't make enough money, so they have to pick up another job in order to feed their families.
Are on Medicaid. A number of them qualify because they make such poor salaries.
Unless you're an appointee, then you can get that. They get the $100,000 jobs and don't need to have any type of experience.
Well, Mr. Manchin doesn't seem to mind the entitlements for the fossil fuel companies.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, we
$15 billion in federal subsidies,
Well, right,
i.e.
corporate welfare.
corporate socialism.
Or the war machine.
Yeah, the war machine. So he's not nickel and diming on money to Ukraine, Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
The Trump tax cuts he wasn't necessarily against.
Yeah.
So it just seems like we got to really cross every X and O as far as funds for working people, not so much for the corporations or the war machine.
Exactly.
See, and he'll make it believe that people like us and what we're saying, that we are the minority in these views. But if you get out and talk to people, I ran for office statewide, so I've talked to a lot of people. And I have yet to run into anybody that doesn't want higher wages.
That's right.
Yeah, they want lower gas bills, they want lower electric bills, they want lower water bills. The wages are staying stagnant, and if you do happen to get an increase, if you get lucky, then it usually gets ate up in insurance. On your, so you usually end up with a pay cut, because insurance costs, go up. But like they were saying, if he would just get out and talk to people, hold real town halls, not town halls just with the people that you in areas that they support you, but to go out and listen. And that's what I'm calling on even the new leadership in the Democratic Party. What I was planning on doing before the new chair came in and, fired me abruptly with 30 seconds notice, is I was going to go out and I was energizing our base. I was setting up events so we could get out into the marginalized communities where we normally are not in, especially down in the South where we have a big problem. To talk to those individuals and to actually have conversations with them and to educate them on how the Republicans are voting that are hurting families. That and then they won't vote for us to be able to get cheaper insulin, just little things like that. But of course, all that got nixed because of retaliation. But if you go out and you talk to the people, we have to get back to where we talk to the people, and then we'll be able to overcome this whatever national media wants to say about West Virginia, and then you'll be hearing from West Virginians, because I had put on some events before I became outreach director for the Build Back Better, and these were West Virginia Democrats, executive committees that sponsored them, and then we make sure media was there, because I said, if we're going to be West Virginia Democrats, then we need to get out here and let people know, we were having rallies, let them know that we support the Build Back Better, and I call that part that didn't get passed the people infrastructure, because we've got to invest in our people, and so that they can feed their family. It's basic thing about feeding your family.
Yes.
Basic.
Affording housing.
Yeah, affordable housing. We're not asking for,
health care.
the $100,000 salaries that they're giving to their appointees.
I just interviewed a houseless woman in Akron, Ohio, and asked her about, the Biden saying that there's a historic economic recovery. And she said, you want to see history? We have more people coming every day to these encampments.
The best thing they could do to address poverty is to increase the poverty level. They should increase the federal poverty level, and across the board in all kinds of ways that would make more people eligible. It would keep people from going off cliffs. It would allow more people to take advantage of programs that are out there. If they did one thing, that would be one way to lift so many people out of poverty at once.
Right.
So
you've ran for office, have you?
No.
So what do you say to people that say, God bless you, but this is a fool's errand trying to run in the Democratic Party? It's a corrupt party. The Republicans are corrupt, the Democrats are corrupt, we need a new party. I know it's harder in some areas to run third party, this and that, but people say, no, the Democrats, it's not that they're spineless, they're corrupt. So why do you feel you could actually do it within the Democratic Party here in West Virginia?
Well, we have a third party. We tried a third party.
Mountain Party?
Yes, the Mountain Party, years ago. And I think there's just not a large enough population to really carry three parties, and it ends up splitting the Democratic or the left-leaning people. So,
well, I mean, when I was preparing to run,
and you ran for House of Delegates, the
yeah,
State House?
Yeah, I ran for magistrate once, and then I ran. And when I actually started talking to people, because that's really my wheelhouse in terms of background and so forth, so I was like, this is easy fit. Like, I've done all this work, perfect. But it was countywide, but I was campaigning and I was talking to people, and I was like, there's a lot of other issues happening, like that are, bigger than this sort of criminal justice piece, which is important. But there's all these other types of issues, and it was happening in like just every jurisdiction. I was having conversations, and that was always coming up, and I was like, there's some there, and maybe this is what needs to sort of be advanced, because it really ultimately was about people over profits, and that really just needed to be the message, to put out there. And I went in wide-eyed, like, la 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 la. I mean, I was going to register as an independent, but I was like, when I first moved back to the area, and I said, no, I'm going to stick with the party, And then when I ran for office, I was like, it's Democrats. Like, we're going to do this. Yay, blah, 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 blah. And I was not included into the fold. And I didn't understand why. But you could see that there was I was not in the in crowd. I just definitely was not. And I left that experience very bitter. Very jaded, and I was like, y'all are on some old bullshit. I mean, really, that's just sort of what I felt about it. And I really would have advised anyone at that time, like, I would have been like that person you're talking about, like, don't waste your time, because they're on some old other stuff. They're really not about whatever. And I was actually going to leave the party. And I got a call from someone who was like, hey, do you want to, be a part of the Kanawha County Executive Committee? I was like, I think I'm done. I think I'm going to move one out. I don't feel like there's a space for me there. And they were like, yeah, there is. Come through. Let's do this. Everybody's not going to be progressive. Everybody's not going to be, sort of some people will be sort of like blue dog and old school kind of Democrats, and they're not going to be particularly liberal about things. And they were like, but you have a voice here and so forth. So I decided I would stay in the party. And then I ultimately ran again. And it was a lot better, and probably just because I was on the executive committee, and I've tried to use my voice there to really talk about diversifying the party in a way, just beyond race even, you know, with regard to ability, with regard to age, all of those type of things. Because, I mean, that's the issue with West Virginia ultimately, is, again, this stagnancy and this complacency and the fact that it's so culturally stifled.
Our older population.
Yeah, our fabric is just not broad enough, and it's not complex enough and threaded with enough, you know, fibers and threads from all types of people that really add to the fabric and the success of the state into one another. Like, we're not feeding, and that's why everybody leaves the state for either future gain or even for vacation. Like, we have like some of the most beautiful things that you can do here, but everyone wants to get out because you can't find a good like Thai restaurant, or, you know what I'm saying, like, there's all these different pieces. So but I did it, and I fared better in terms of in some embrace, but as a whole, you know, there still were some lackings. You know, there still was not complete buy-in. So part of the clique was like, yeah, come through, and the other part was like, we're going to sit back and see. And
well,
you know,
also, let's just call it like it is. There's a bit of not a bit. There's been a race problem with the West Virginia Democratic Party. I mean, I sat in a 2-hour meeting on Zoom.
Yes.
That was pretty horrible the way they treated. They kept black people out of the Zoom.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh no, we'll hear from you after the vote."
Yeah.
It was really, if you had the patience to sit through that for 2 hours, it was pretty bad. I know, you know, there's been some changes at the party,
It was nightmarish. It was nightmarish. But I mean, the vestiges of all that, and the bottom line is that you're not going to win. You're not going to win without black votes voting democratically here. This is not going to happen. So how you think you can run a campaign and marginalize and shut down, and that's just not going to happen. You know, but on the, you know, when we had like these events with multiple people, you know, I think people were surprised because I was like, you know, aren't we the party? We're supposed to be the party of diversity, of, you know, tolerance. We're supposed to be the party of labor. There's all these things that are like the hallmarks of the Democratic Party in theory, and we don't apply them, and we don't hold true to those things, and that's why we're losing, and we've got to do better with that messaging. But first time was horrible. Second time was a little bit better. I'm not doing it a third time. But Marianne, I know her experience was, but she's also running for a higher office, but was completely worse than mine, I think, in terms of acceptance. And
I didn't try. I'm the type of person that I just don't let people stand in my way on what's going on, and I speak out and I keep on moving. And I, you know, I got out and ran my race, but I realized at the local level that there were a lot of people
for state auditor.
For state auditor, the local Democrats in the local executive committees were the most helpful to me. And that was because I wasn't afraid to go and talk to them. But one of the problems that I find is that not enough of them will kind of chastise the leadership, and that's how we get into these corruption problems. Like you had brought up the AAC, it's even worse. Several of us filed a grievance because of this enfranchisement that was going on in the Affirmative Action Committee, and this was after what you had seen.
That grievance went to the DNC, right?
Well, our grievance didn't go as far as the DNC. It just went to the local. Went to the state leadership, and the state leadership said yes, these things had happened because there was a group of progressives. Mainly what they wanted were seats on the executive committee. They weren't able to get them by getting elected on the ballot, so they formed the Affirmative Action Committee under the farce of giving us this representation, this voice. But what ended up happening was that they started manipulating and kind of coercing everybody to start silencing those of us who were saying, hey, you violate the bylaws here. We need to be more inclusive. We started having people drop off because they were realizing, okay, they're not being inclusive and I'm not going to be a part of this. So they, just started resigning. The people who were more of the support, supporting being inclusive and making sure that we all had a voice on that affirmative action committee. There were supposed to be some bylaw changes and stuff. So that never happened. And then, so now we have, we have Selena Vickers, who's a white woman. We have Shane. If you ask him who he is, he says he's a white man. They have a secretary that's a white man. They have a parliamentarian that's a white man. So those are the leadership positions in the Affirmative Action Committee. I put up our black co-chair, a young man very active in the community, to run, as hoping that they would select him so we could have at least, a black person on there. But they had already had their private meetings on who they were going to vote for. And so he didn't get elected. And then that would have gave him, because there's not very many places in leadership for very young black men at all in the Democratic Party. And I'm, probably most likely not in the Republican Party. So that was I was hoping that if we're truly an affirmative action committee, that's what we would want to see. We would want to support a young, active, and part of our caucus, active in our caucus. There were people that were elected, weren't even active in their caucuses. So, it's very disheartening, but we have to be the change that we want to see. And that's why we have to keep staying out here, being the voice that we need to be, so they can see we are the Democrats. We are the people who do support those democratic policies. And even though we have people in leadership that don't support these democratic policies, we are the rank and file Democrats, and these are the policies that we support. And we're going to keep on giving our voice, and we're going to keep on being out here and letting people know what our communities want, what our communities need. Safety, safe drinking water. I mean, hey, that's all we want. We got people that run on those policies, and then they turn around and they vote against the ban on nuclear waste. Okay, we got to hold these people accountable, and this is what I keep saying: hold them accountable.
And I'd like to ask you. Obviously, we're talking about Manchin, but President Biden. I don't know if you remember in the primary in 2020, the media. He's the one who could get things done. He's the one who could get Republicans over. He's the one that could kind of close the gap in the Democratic Party. I mean, he's in fetal position. I'm sorry, he's got COVID, feel better.
Right.
But, I mean, honestly, you think FDR would let Joe Manchin stop his presidency?
Right.
Lyndon B. Johnson, he did a lot of other terrible stuff.
Chuck Schumer should be exercising his power as leader of the Senate, and he should be sitting on Manchin. He should be seeing that Manchin follows the Democratic Party line here, that we pass the agenda that was voted on the president's agenda. Schumer has a lot of power, Biden has a lot of power, and both of them need to use it. They simply need to use the power that they have, and they have it.
And why do you think they're not using it?
That's the question.
That is the question, and I hope the answer is that they're just feeling a little under the weather, and that I hope that when they're feeling...
You're a kinder person than I am.
She's kinder than I am, too.
When they're feeling a little stronger here, use that strength, because nobody else can do it. I did 5,000 hangings on doors. I walked to 5,000 doors myself, hanging vote for Biden tickets. So you can absolutely use that as my ticket to ask you to sit on Manchin, force him to to pass climate action now because we have no time left. The earth depends on it. Every living thing on this planet depends on us acting today on climate. We don't have time left. There is no time.
And let me ask you, not to disagree with kind Sally, but I'm a bit more cynical. I think, there's a rotating villain theory here. I think Biden actually, Manchin's doing the dirty work for Biden, because I don't think Biden actually believes in most of these things. His record as a senator was more to the right.
Truly.
And I don't think, the donors of both parties, they might say fight for reproductive rights for women and fight for LGBTQ people, because that doesn't affect their wallets.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think the Democratic Party bigwig donors want a paid sick leave and a $15 minimum wage.
No,
By the way,
they
$15
don't.
minimum wage right now might as well be a $12 minimum wage.
Listen,
Exactly. It's
that's
$7.
That's why, I mean, from Hillary's run,
Right.
and even in Biden's run, like, people want something different. And
West
we know that
Virginia-
when progressives, like when Bernie was leading,
Right.
and these other sort of outside
West Virginia voted
candidates
for Bernie.
were
Every
leading,
county.
right?
Every county.
Yeah,
Every county.
We're leading. All of a sudden, mysteriously, the kibosh is in, and then they don't make it to the to the dance and that kind of thing. So there's an issue with that, and the reason that doesn't happen is because a lot of these same folks are able to survive no matter what. Like, when you have nexus to power, it doesn't make a difference. Like, you've all gone to the same schools. You all have, like, your kids go to the same private stuff. Like, it's this little clique in Congress. And that's what I think, what Trump, when he was talking about, drain the swamp and stuff, that's why it resonated with people, because we all know it's both sides.
Unfortunately, it's
are all in
located
cahoots.
right next to him on Wall Street.
Yeah. So they're in that space, and
That
they're
is
wheeling and dealing.
why.
They're going to be okay no matter what. And
Yes.
the policies that are coming, down the pike are things that are going to benefit them. They all stand to win if they keep things at the status quo, and they're fine with that. And that's what consistently happens. They have to keep that happening, and that's the piece of, I don't know if it's corruption, I just will say collusion, that we have to break through. And that's why I like these other folks like the AOCs and so forth, and younger candidates, and also too, which is inconsistent with the Democratic Party. I'm in favor of term limits, because a lot of these people are in bed with folks and they're getting kickbacks and they stay in there, and it's just a repetitive cycle. But that is not a Democrat. Now, that's the one thing that's all of a sudden not a Democratic sort of priority, is term limits.
How about wealth limits?
Yeah, I would
Limits
rather
be
see
great.
wealth limits. I'm afraid term limits would end up
Yeah.
just buying more politicians. But absolutely, I think
We'll have to
there are
talk about that.
40% of our vote, of the people here, didn't vote at all. And people are giving up. People are giving up
Yes.
now
Yeah.
even more. I'm an organizer, and I'm out there talking to people. It's hard to get people continue to be excited when nothing is ever delivered.
That's
Not
right.
one thing is ever delivered
Thing
that
that
is
they run on.
promised.
And
That's right.
when you keep
And
telling people, my producer Colin made a real bang-up video. We went from 2004 to present, just a reel of all the politicians saying this is the most important election of your
Oh,
lifetime.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I
John
didn't
Kerry,
see that.
Obama, Biden, Republicans.
Exactly.
Each time, this is the most important election of our lifetime. My lifetime's getting shorter, and
Yeah.
nothing much has changed since then.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it makes people kind of give up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, especially in West Virginia, because some people say, well, how are people switching? Some people are switching to independent too.
Yeah.
They're part of both parties, and and then people did, because of their support of Trump, switch to Republican. But I think that a lot of West Virginians, no matter what happens with the economy, we have learned to adapt. So they're wanting to change so bad because they were like, oh, it was 80 years of Democrat control, and I always say, were those really Democrats though for the
Right.
80 years?
Right.
Because you
Yeah.
got to realize like how we used to be. So I don't know if I'd really say it was Democrat.
Right.
80 years of Democrat control. It might have been at least 60 years of conservative Democrat control. But I think we're so used to adapting, and that we don't feel like, oh, well, it's not going to get any better for us, so why should I vote? But I feel like if people start understanding the power, there is power in your vote, and more of us came together to have a voting block in these certain areas that they tend to not even pay attention to, then they would be able to be held more accountable too. Because right now they're kind of like, well, what's it matter? Because only certain people are getting in. The people that have the money. But I just feel like it's just, which it makes it, it's disheartening when we have Democrats that are voting to do the things they do to the homeless. Now, we're not going to have property owners be accountable for their abandoned property, but we're going to do something to the homeless, because if they're out of sight, they're out of mind. It's like they don't exist. Yeah. And I guess that's the same thing that we're doing, with our foster care systems. Like, those children are out of sight, then they're out of our mind, and we don't have to worry about, what's going on, because West Virginia, we've got a really bad reputation with our foster care system. We have a bad reputation with how we are treating our homeless. And unfortunately, we're having Democrats, I think they're scared to stand up because they feel like this power that the Republicans have over the state. But if they were to get out and they were to talk to people, and people learn and meet the candidates, I know it's hard to meet, lots of people, but still, you get out and you talk to people, and they're going to talk to other people. And it's just turned into a money buying votes thing with how much ever money you can get to get your advertising. But people have got to meet you, and then your personality comes through. Then you can address their concerns. You can show that you are concerned about their lives and how they are living.
Right.
Of course, we have also, though, I think that we do have an organization, West Virginia Can't Wait, that has attempted, that part of their platform is none of them will take any corporate money. So there are people out there running for office that have pledged never to take corporate money, never to, engage in that kind of transactional work. So things are changing. People are working on the ground at the local level to try to change local governments on, through the state. So
I think it also
there's
helps.
some things that are.
I think it also helps. You mentioned AOC. Frankly, they might agree with the policies, but they've been a little too inside baseball for my liking. If it's great that AOC got arrested protesting Roe, I mean, I support that. But why weren't they out there during the pandemic at the White House demanding expanded health care during a pandemic? Yeah. Why? Not just her, I mean, other progressive. Yeah. So I think if people, even the non-voters, see people in Congress even going against their own party, but I think they're even scared. I mean, they've been, they were threatened, if you support Nina Turner, we're going to,
that's my girl,
we're going to really go with your challenger and your primary.
I mean, it's bullshit. I mean, it just pisses me off. That's the thing. That's the thing that really just it claws at me so badly. Like,
well, let's ask you about another thing that pisses you off. You mentioned that you had some run-ins with Mr. Manchin in your time.
I have had a run-in with Mr. Manchin. And I told him at the time, this was 2016. And I was running for office, and we happened to be at an event. And I just tell him, I was like, I don't like you right now. And he's like, well, what did I do? And I just told him, I was like, you haven't supported Obama. And, he tried to give a song and dance about, well, the constituency this, and, things wouldn't have gone through anyway. And I was like, no, this is the problem. I was like, because when he first came into office, we had the executive, we had the Senate, and we had the House.
Yeah.
We could have done anything.
Super-proof
majority. And you pushed back, and you didn't go along. Now, there were other Democrats that didn't get along either. They were still testing the water and trying to figure out the cultural analysis and their own version of critical race theory, application at the time. Whether it was the water was too hot or whatever. But the bottom line is that he could have done it, and he didn't. And I had a problem with that, and I told him. And then he, shifted to, having to represent, minors and industries and, so forth. And, I just, call bullshit on that. Like, that doesn't, resonate with me. I'm not really believing that. You can do better. You can do better, and you need to do better because the people are relying on you to get things done. Now, for a fact, he was not, and he was running that year as well, which is why he was out. But he would not have won. He would not have won if it weren't for the fact that at the last minute he made a pivot on healthcare.
It was at 18.
That's right.
Was 18. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. Well, then the next year. That's the only reason that he won in that next election is because of healthcare. Because Morrissey, who's I'm not going to even get into, Mr. He's the anti-EPAer. Anti-West Virginianer,
anti-woman,
anti-just the. I better not call him a dweeb on podcast.
Anti-planet.
But but he was gonna win. He was gonna beat this man. Oh my goodness. But both of them are equally, as far as I'm concerned, bad in terms of the things that they've done. And
but Manchin moved on terms of supporting Obamacare.
But
it took quite a push.
It did
against,
But he finally came around. But that's the only reason.
Right.
That's the only reason that he won. But he's done a disservice. At the Kavanaugh hearings, and I remember going to his office because again, you can't ever see him. So that one experience was an experience I had on the campaign trail, or it was actually I think it was election day that day. And then I've seen him, at another event, I think for somebody that was running for governor or what have you. But you can't ever get into the room with him, to have these discussions. I think I take that back. There was when they were doing the actions in D.C., this was around the time that people were going to his yacht and so forth. I think I don't even think they got to see him then.
What?
Did they?
Yeah, we got
Did
to.
they go?
Yeah,
Did you get to actually have? Okay, so you all did get to see him, but I've yet to see him, and I've been to his office. I go to his office all the time. But that Kavanaugh thing, I was just like, listen, you cannot vote for this man. You absolutely cannot vote for this person, and it bothers me now that he's like, oh, I didn't know, and I should. Yeah. I'm like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah. Don't pee on me and tell me it's raining. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
And he cares so much about coal miners that he's jacking up their electricity rates.
And he's jacking up their electricity rates, and he's not making sure, even with the Build Back Better, that they have their black lung benefit, funding. And so,
that's the thing that kind of gets me is they act like they care. Because I come from coal country. I mean, and it's amazing how Republicans even, they run on that supporting of the coal. They don't support coal miners, though, because Shelley Moore Capito and, Joe, could have, either one of them could have gotten those miners their benefits by now.
Yep.
And I think that, that's another reason probably that maybe we're losing some of the Democrats down in the South because, they depend on those benefits. Yeah. We keep getting this lip service and we're not getting anything. And at what point are we going to get fed up? With both parties. And that's what's happening. Yeah. People are getting fed up with both parties. I'm still holding out hope, but I think it's going to take us on the ground to make the change, not the leadership.
Unless Joe Manchin is a complete sociopath, which he might be, at what point is he going to say, well, my yacht's going to be on fire next? We're in a heat wave. London's on fire. I don't know the numbers now, but last time I checked, in Spain and Portugal, 1,500 people had died from heat. Right. So he's saying, maybe I'll look at climate in a month if I see the inflation report. By the way, the climate money is all neoliberal tax incentives anyway. It's not like a binding thing.
Right.
It's always, it always is.
So, we're well past, there's some irreversible damage at this point.
Exactly.
And, it's just crazy. Unless he truly doesn't understand that, or he simply doesn't care, but it's his grandkids.
Right.
Yeah, but some of these people don't care about their own mothers. You know what I'm saying? It's just that mentality that they're that greedy and they're that, pressed for, money and clout and all this kind of stuff, and it really has nothing to do with the interest of people. And let's be clear, people are relatively disposable at this point, like just in general. I mean, if you look at the jobs that are going to be going away, when you look at technology, when you look at people on spaceships going up and testing out different markets, like there's a clear indication that there are going to be many people that are left behind. And I mean, maybe he has enough money and enough status that he can get on a ship with his future progeny and go someplace or send them up by the time that happens.
Dream on.
And suffer the rest of the fools. But but humanity has just changed a lot. When we used to have to dig dishes and when we had to do things by hand, even from slavery, as black folks, like there was value in that. And that's why, we were perceived as commodities and, something that you could trade and, commerce. And all of our work since then, in the collective people's work, has been worth some things. But now with technology, there's really not a whole lot of need, for a person to even look at give you a diagnosis, based on your test results. A computer can do that just as easily these days. So the more we are less valuable to profiteers, then the less care that they have. And that's sort of where I see things at this point. And I think it's just easy for them to just write it off and be like, as long as, me and mine are okay, then forget the rest of you.
And I think that's why, as when they're talking about the inflation, and Biden saying, the unemployment rate's down, blah, blah, blah. That there's people that just gave up, too, on jobs. And we go by what we can feel with our pocketbooks, So they can, we've had other presidents that, even Trump was, touting that. But we're sitting here like, but I don't feel like my income has not gone up,
The media pushes it.
Yeah.
Most of the media doing pretty well. The national media, they make six figures.
They're making
and they're getting raises, whereas we're not getting raises. And if we happen to get lucky enough to get one, it's just like with this ARP money that came down.
Right.
There's a premium pay where they can give their employees, and not many of them have. There are some that have, but not many have given that money out. And then there's a lot still sitting on the money.
And one of the big tax breaks that was given with the ARP money to Nucor Corporation that is coming in with touting all of these new jobs that are going to come in with Nucor. It turns out that all of those jobs are going to people from Utah and out of state. So
that happens all the time with our construction work. That happens. They complain about this all the time, and they're supposed to. They always act like, we're putting some clause in here so those jobs go to West Virginians, and then they'll say, all the West Virginians are on drugs, so we don't have a workforce.
Guess what? John Deere. I went in October. We went to Iowa to cover the John Deere strikes. They won historic contract. Now John Deere sending some of those factories that went on strike to Mexico.
Of course.
And there's no government penalty for any of that. Corporations
until they reinstate antitrust, until they reinstate penalties for the corporations and reinstate regulation on banking, we're sunk. And so we have to go back to what was working under FDR, what FDR put in, and go beyond that, of course, but at least back to what we had under FDR.
Which would resonate here, because if it wasn't for the CCC, this place would be, we're already below poverty level for the most part. Like, it would be far worse than what it is, currently in terms of that. But that was something that was built in. And so that's a message that I'm saying that will resonate.
And we had the opportunity to do that with Build Back Better. We had that opportunity to do it once again. And instead of doing that, instead of fighting for more, we had 2 senators who fought for less than what we could have gotten for this state. Never in the history of our state have we had representatives that have fought to bring home less than they could. It was insane. Utterly insane. Less money than they could. Fewer jobs.
Last question. You know, the reporting trip we're doing is on inflation, but at some point the gas prices will go down, food prices will go down, probably not soon, but at some point. But that doesn't mean things are rosy. I mean, housing has become unaffordable. We're
Everywhere.
in a huge housing bubble.
Yeah.
We go on the road.
Because of REITs,
Yeah.
right.
We go on the road. People are being evicted all the time. You talk to some homeless people. I think there's a stereotype that these are like the lower rings of society.
Yeah.
These people that could be any one of us.
Yeah.
They just
At any moment.
right.
Yeah.
So you know, what are your thoughts on when we're out of the crisis? People are still kind of up shit's creek.
Yeah.
For the most part.
They are. I mean, that's a reality. You know, one of the things that I've been doing is pushing back against some of the legislation. One of our well-meaning legislators here recently, they wanted to what was it? There was a bill that was to allow homeless people to have like over there by Bream, like a little development where they could go and so forth.
They didn't want it near
Tiny
school.
houses.
Yeah,
right.
and they didn't want anything. I mean, they made it. They tried to criminalize homelessness,
Yes.
basically, and attribute that ilk of folks to being, a danger. And I'm like, you have to stop this stigmas. You have to stop this, because the reality it's coming down the pike. Like, there's so many people that just cannot afford to live in their houses. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the rates are just through the roof. They just are through the roof.
Because rent's
for
going up,
basic-
which they could have used some of that COVID money to
Yeah.
help with that, but they didn't. I think our governor was just concentrating on seeing how much of surplus that he could have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. It's like I was saying before. It's like if we can move the homeless people out of our vision,
We begin to
then
see
they
them.
won't exist.
Then they won't exist.
They
yeah.
tried to
They
shut
won't
down
exist.
They tried to shut down one of the few places that feed the homeless at St. John's Episcopal Church. Unbelievably, they wanted to shut that down because they didn't want to see all the homeless people out there, or all the unfortunate people that hang around waiting for something to eat.
And these are the people that care so much about life.
Oh, absolutely,
about life.
100%.
And the one that have tried to move us into this whole Bible Belt, running
Right.
down into Texas and so forth. And I'm
Right.
like, no, that's not West Virginia.
You know, and what kills us is that when you hear some of the stars' backgrounds, Steve Harvey said he slept in his car, was homeless. Tyler Perry, he was homeless. Tiffany Haddish, they were homeless. So if people like that have now came to stardom, if they were in a situation that caused them to be homeless, then what makes you think that these people are voluntarily homeless?
Right.
I mean, because that's the mentality that people that want to move them out of the way is like, oh, they're homeless because they want to be. They're homeless because they want to be. Yeah. So we've got children that are homeless because they wanted to be homeless.
Right.
But we've got to get back to where we have compassion for people, and we have representatives that actually are representing us, and that we are holding them accountable. All of this comes down to holding our elected officials accountable.
Yes.
We can't give up just because it might look bleak.
Right.
We can hold them accountable, and that's one of the reasons I still get out and I'm like, okay, I need you to vote.
Corporations
we do
may
need
have
people
the
to
money,
vote.
but we have the vote.
We have the vote.
We have the vote.
But the problem is we're not getting out and voting. I think if the
We
voting
need to mobilize.
participation were to increase, we would see some changes.
Yeah.
Because the same people are voting. The people, more of the party people are voting. You got to get the everyday rank
the
of founder
baby boomer
vote.
generations, a lot of them vote for the same old status quo politicians. Maybe
They
an
do.
exception.
Well, in a
Yeah.
sense, the problem is we're always running from the boogeyman. And that can't continue to be our message.
Yeah.
Because this is what drops people off. We
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
keep you're being afraid that if you don't vote for Manchin, a Republican will get in.
Well, you got a Republican.
We have one.
Well, they're saying that control. So, I guess we depend on the other states to try to get some more Democrats in, I guess, and we'll see what happens.
I don't know what materially would have changed if Manchin moved over to the Republican Party.
In fact, he would have
he might
less.
help us more.
We wouldn't have control of the
because he would be
Senate.
bipartisan our way. He might throw us some votes.
He would have less power. He would have less.
He's
power.
not going to switch up.
Right.
I'll tell.
Right.
People have said this, and I do not believe he's going to change parties.
Oh, no,
He
he's
will
not
not,
going. He's not
because
going
he'll
to.
have
I don't
no
think he'll
power if
He's
he
not going
left.
Oh, he loves this. He
He
loves
does.
He would
the
have no
attention.
power.
He does.
That's what everybody said.
absolutely
Oh, don't
does.
push him too hard. He's going to switch. He's not switching parties.
No, he's not,
He's
because
not.
he would be nothing in the Republican Party. He'd be on the back bench.
Yeah, he won't switch.
So there's no way that he would go.
And he gets indignant. He gets indignant when these young kids, who are like peeping game, are like coming up out of the woodwork, and they're going to his face, and they're like da 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 da. Oh, don't touch my car, and all this. He's just indignant about it all, and I'm like, you're out of touch.
Well,
Like,
maybe
you gotta
these
come
other.
back, and
Yeah.
then don't try and act like you're a bird, because you're not. You're
Well,
not
maybe
him.
some of these other states will get enough Democrats in,
Yes.
and then we can
Yeah.
weaken that power, and then we can see what the Democrats will really do.
Yeah.
Now, if they
Yeah.
continue to do what they're doing now and not passing the things that are promised, then they're going to need a big wake-up call, I guess.
Well, they say give us 2 more senators. I got news for you. If the Democratic Party gets 2 more senators and technically makes Joe Manchin and Sinema obsolete, there's going to be new excuses, and then we're going to have to start talking about a general strike.
Yes.
Because there always seems to be excuses. Obama had near a supermajority.
Right.
Always excuses. He ran on a very progressive platform.
Sure
I
did.
understand, first black president, that comes with...
The first term. The
Right.
second term is something different.
Right.
Yeah.
But I
no, I
think,
get
I think
you.
the people, I get it. A lot of people understand what you're saying, but also say it's a corrupt system.
Right.
So the system corrupts, and the only way to do it is for people to boycott economically. Now that's tough.
Yeah.
How are you going to go and boycott
Especially
economically if you're
because-
working 2 jobs?
Well,
or
You're
It's a
already
monopoly.
technically boycotting because you don't have the money anyway.
Yeah.
So
And it's a monopoly, and like 3 companies own everything, on everything. There are 3 airlines, there are 3 corporations that control food. There are 3 oil companies.
6 companies on the media.
Right. Oh, 6 companies
That's
on the
Excluding
media.
this.
Okay, well,
That's
a little
absolutely
bit,
insane.
a little
No,
bit
didn't
bigger
know.
on media, but still, when you go up the SEC ladder, you're probably all, kind of controlled by the same.
Yeah.
All of our healthcare systems now are consolidating.
Yeah.
People don't have choices. This is a misnomer that under
free.
And that's why I
that we're
can
free
understand why
or
people are
that we're
against
under
single
a
payer.
functioning
Like, I don't get that.
capitalistic system, because there is no there's no competition right now.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
only collusion. And,
well, you were talking about the parties.
it puts
before.
They
people
don't
at a
want big government,
disadvantage.
but they'll take a big corporation.
Didn't the People's Party?
Exactly.
Don't they? They have their
Exactly.
own. They were trying to start this like 3rd thing, and
Don't
they
get
got
me-
their own
Who?
Don't get me started.
corruption. So I don't know if having
Yeah.
another
The
party.
People's Party.
I know. I'm
People's
like,
Party.
there's corruption there. So I just don't know if there is even.
That was more.
I signed up for that.
That was
I
more
wanted
the,
to see what was
that
going
was
to
more
happen.
the vanity party. The
Is
vanity
that what it
project.
was?
Yeah,
Because
it
I'm
never
like, I
went
don't know if
anywhere. I don't
another
know what
party
happened.
is really. I mean, honestly, we do have to fix the one that I think we have to fix the ones that we have, and I think there's people on both sides that want to fix. Like, there's Democrats that want to fix the Democrats, and there's Republicans that want to fix the Republican Party.
Well, I think
So
there's a
if we
lot
can
less
get 'em-
Republicans that want to fix it.
Well, they're
like
still
it.
out.
I-
No,
They're like
there's still some of them
they're
out
like
there.
they're gravy right now.
There's still some out. Well, they feel like we're a small
They're
number.
running
too.
ads
Let me
for
tell you
Cinema
something.
and
If the
Manchin. They're like,
Democratic
yeah.
Party continues its whatever you want to call it, you say spineless, I say corruption, whatever. We're going to be
Whack.
back in the medieval times.
I call it whack. Yeah.
Because the Republican Party is trying to bring us back to the
They-
medieval times.
I
Yeah.
know, but it's
They are.
that evils thing,
Yeah.
like which
Yep. And
sometimes it's
then
going to take drastic things that you're going to have to do to be able to get.
I have a trick question.
the underground.
Whatever
Get what we
happened?
need.
Whatever happened to? Didn't Manchin? Wasn't there? Didn't he have a deal to bring it was a deal with China, and they were going to do some huge, like, multi-million-dollar project in West Virginia.
Was he governor then or something?
No, this was not too long ago.
Oh, I don't remember that.
No,
Interesting.
so it never happened.
I don't remember.
Smoke and mirrors, and it's just like there's always like this extension of like, I'm going to do this, and then nothing ever materializes. And now, again, with the new core thing, so we've got that bill passed. And did you all read about the new agency he's trying to create for the disposal of nuclear waste?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm keeping an eye on, our community on Institute, because that seems to be a wasteland where they want to throw stuff. And
That's all another story. I've covered in different parts of the country. You got nuclear waste sites that are leaking.
Right.
Yeah.
And nuclear waste is leaking into the air. St. Louis, children before COVID were wearing masks in the neighborhood.
Wow.
Right.
Because it was
Yeah.
toxic. Yeah.
So he wants to create a new agency for this. So I'm like, all right. So I'm waiting to see, like,
So he does like big government.
are you going exactly now? Are you going to? Is this going to be on your property, like where you have your coal ash stuff, like where the coal bearing blockade was, or is it going to be someplace else, or
Well,
what's going to happen with
I
that?
had an idea.
I wonder.
I don't know if we're going to make it work with the camera, but I had an idea of just paddling myself to his yacht, chaining myself until I got a one-on-one sit-down with him.
Oh wow.
Yeah. We'll see if we don't want to sink the live view. That's $25,000. So
Yeah, don't do that. But
but,
somebody can be on deck and they can just film you from afar.
True.
It's a nice little area. I know that little area right there.
Oh,
Because you know what, Joe
you'll be
Manchin,
arrested
Joe
by the
Manchin
end.
is one man. I probably will, yeah. Joe Manchin is one man, but honestly, there's going to be another Manchin,
course.
because we have a bunch of millionaires claiming to represent, struggling people
It is.
who are very, very detached by design
Yeah.
to what you're dealing with. So.
Yeah.
They'll brag about, I came from a trailer park, and you're like, well, when's the last time you've been there?
Thank you,
So true.
thank you, Marianne, Sally, Kathy, for taking the time. The Joe Manchin Whisperers. And, we're going to be in West Virginia for another day or two. Sorry if I miss super chats. I try not to read them during, but thank you if you left a super chat. Thank you to people who have signed up as members. I've seen a couple today. This is just on the ground, real reporting, speaking with folks. CNN's not doing it. The local media is probably not doing it either, from everything I could tell. And it's really, really important to keep getting around. We started in Pennsylvania, then we went to Ohio, now we're in West Virginia. We'll be here for another day or two. Tomorrow, I think we're going to Fayette County and then Huntington for a couple different stories. So please support us. On Twitter, video we did, an interview with a houseless woman, got around today. It went semi-viral. So that's on @StatusCoup, so go give that a retweet if you can. Really heartbreaking interview. The whole interview is up on the channel. And yeah, we've gotten some donations from GoFundMe, so you could support our reporting on our GoFundMe, which is in the description, the link. You could also support at PayPal. We've gotten a couple donations there. CashApp. We don't have any money from the big bankers, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate. Our funding comes from you. So thank you for the support. And most importantly, please, if you can, if you can't, we get it, tough times. But if you can, sign up as a member for $5 to $10 a month. StatusCoup.com/join. You get to join us on our Zoom call once a month. We do behind the scenes videos from the road, so you get some perks too. Thank you for watching, and we will be live tomorrow. I'm not sure what time, so make sure you sign up for our text list so you get a text message when we're live. That's StatusCoup.com/text. We don't text you when we go to the bathroom. It's only when we're live, so we won't bother you other than when we're live. Thank you. And spread these live streams. If you can't support us financially, you can share. You can press the like button, press the share button, post on social media, your own posts telling people to watch this. It's not just like lefties and tree huggers that care about this stuff. Conservatives care about inflation, high prices, corruption. Neoliberals do to a certain extent. Libertarians, I mean, when you take out the social issues that divide people economically, people are experiencing the same things in a corrupt system. I use my parents as kind of the measuring stick. I love them, but they both watch Fox News. They're both a little ignorant. And when I show them this stuff, usually their first response is, why is the media not covering this?
Yes.
So it's not necessarily that people are so entrenched on Team Blue or Team Red. Most people have no fucking idea, excuse my French, what the hell is going on. They don't know that people are being evicted still all over the place. They don't see, she said, out of sight, out of mind with the homeless. That's why we're showing it to you. That's why we went to two camps yesterday in Akron, Ohio, of homeless people in 96-degree heat. They're out there. That's why we're doing it. And these videos are never going to go viral. I'm not doing this to be a millionaire anchor. These videos don't go viral. YouTube buries them most of the time. But we do it anyway as far as you will take us. So